we know and we understand and we see the merits of developing increasingly diverse thoughts within our organisation, but practically how do we go about dealing with that as well?
That diversity has many layers and includes characteristics that are visible, so gender, race, age, the invisible or less visible, such as class, religion, sexual orientation, and also cognitive diversity.
And how do we as leaders actually engage with other people's diversity? How do we actually nurture that? How do we accept it? How do we utilise it productively?
The underlying organisational culture is where the true work lies. And I focus on people through the lens of culture add, not culture fit.
Welcome back to the advisory deck. Thanks so much for joining us for another of these conversations for business owners, business leaders, senior people thinking about how do we improve the health of our organisation and its sustainability for the years ahead. I'm joined again by James McGill. James, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. We're sitting here looking through our little advisory deck of cards, and one of the topics that came up, which is a challenging one, no doubt about it, is diversity. The topic of diversity, where it fits within businesses, within senior leadership teams, boards as well. It's a topic that I think a lot of leaders sort of scratch their heads about and go, we know and we understand and we see the merits of developing increasingly diverse thoughts within our organisation, but practically how do we go about dealing with that as well? So not an easy one, James.
It's not, and it's one that takes a bit of thinking time to figure out. I mean, to me, diversity should be about making sure that the business is a better fit and reflection of the audience you're looking to engage with. Right? So it makes sense if you're looking to sell a very clear product to a very small set of the population, whatever that might be, then if your workforce executives down to whoever reflects that group you're looking to sell to, that makes strategic sense, right? Because then you're going to think the same way and engage them with the same way. Very small number of customers, of companies are like that. Most companies are trying to sell more than one product or to more than one type of audience. And so therefore, the more your internal culture and language and thinking reflects the audience you're selling to, the better off you are. And that, for most people, is about diversity. Right? And it's harder in a small company, obviously, if you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 people. It's hard to get a great range of diversity there. So there are constraints around how you can do that. But I think then it's about how do you make sure you're thinking like your audience, which might be through an advisory board, it might be through your advisors and how they make you think about something. But a topic that probably for larger companies is now a common topic. Right? HR teams, they understand the research is very clear that more diverse teams give you a better outcome. The smaller you are, small, medium business, family business, it gets harder. But I think it's a topic there that is more important now than it was 5 years ago. Actually, no, it's not more important. It's getting more airtime than it was 5 years ago. And I'm sure that conversation is just going to keep on happening.
I think, most leaders and larger organisations do see this potential upside for expanding the range of inputs, ideas, worldviews, experiences, perspectives to help them craft decisions and take actions which are going to be better engaged with by their constituents, by their customers, by their communities as well. I think they also see the challenge of managing diversity. So, homogeneity kind of starts to build in an organisation after a period of time because people like us work here, and I do a lot of work in agriculture, and it's no sort of a surprise to walk into a lot of large agricultural organisation kind of senior leadership team board meetings, and we're seeing 50-year-old blokes mostly from a similar sort of a background as well, because that's just the nature of how that's evolved. Fast forward to 2020, the world's changing. We've got new generations of people coming through. We've got gender diversity, cultural diversity, experience diversity. People coming in from different backgrounds, different skills and experiences. And I think what we're seeing now is a lot of businesses reconciling the idea of, well, we want the value of that, but it's not an easy thing to manage. It's tricky. because difference, right? Difference, and I think, my observation would be when I've seen it managed quite well at senior leadership team levels, takes some pretty mature leadership, takes leaders who can sit there and take diverse opinions, perspectives, inputs, and hold them there, and rationally work through and say, well, okay, how do we synthesize all of that information to create a better outcome for our customers, to put a better thing out into the marketplace, versus just saying, okay, yes, we've got diversity in this organisation. That in and of itself isn't necessarily going to be the end game that they're looking for, right?
No, it's not. And I think fundamentally business is about winning in the sense that you want to be profitable, right? You want people, and there's a number of things that build towards that profitability. But companies exist, whether you're a for-profit or for-purpose, you have to be profitable, otherwise it's not a sustainable business, right? No. And so there are different ways you can get there, and one of those ways is about having a great team and great culture. And if you have a culture that is very much about the same type of people, and that might be, like you're talking about, there for a long time, you have to be brave to go and embrace change. But the reality is that the world is changing, and if you don't embrace that change and go along and look for different ways to compete and be different, you will get left behind. And one of the things I enjoy most about going into companies like you going as consultants as well, is you get these different ideas. And it's really energizing to go to somewhere and hear a different voice, and you can see that new energy, that new idea for the right companies can really be transformational. And so I really encourage people who haven't gone down this path or haven't figured out how to go down this path to keep talking about it and keep thinking about it. And there are plenty of experts out there who will help you figure out the right way to do it and how to take your existing team along that journey. Whether that's, you've got a group of 60-year-olds and you want to bring in someone younger, or there's a different, whatever it might be. I think that diversity is a broad topic.
Yes.
But I think I really encourage it again as a way of differentiating. We spoke about product differentiation before. This is just part of that same conversation, right? You just get that diversity, makes you think differently. That can lead to different opportunities. Yes. It's not something that should be forgotten when you're talking about, I guess, your strategic imperatives.
Yeah, I would say don't be scared of the idea of exploring ways to achieve, diversity and bring the benefits of diverse thinking into your organisation. Be mindful though that there are some tripwires involved here. So we thought we'd introduce a couple of people to share a couple of comments who have some deeper expertise in this area around different facets of diversity. Let's hear from them now.
Thanks, Troy and James. My name's Jocelyn and I'm the Managing Director of the Engage Space. Your conversation really supports the evidence around the benefit of diversity in the workplace, but often there still remains the challenge of implementation and it not being that tokenistic tick box. What is critical here is that we actually prioritise inclusion to ensure a business can sustain any intent to build a diverse workforce, because sometimes good intentions don't always lead to great outcomes. To start then, it's important to be clear about the definition of diversity and inclusion and being mindful that this is an evolving space. Floating around the internet is a fabulous analogy that explains that diversity is like being asked to a party, whereas inclusion is being asked to dance. Carrying on my analogies with this one taken from Fuzzy One Day, a guru in the diversity space, considering making a cake, diversity is the ingredients, so your eggs, flour, milk. Inclusion is making that mix work, and as leaders this needs to be embedded through your organisation. It cannot be a standalone function. It's really important in making the first step to then understand what is the purpose of creating a diverse workforce. What are you actually trying to achieve? What voices do you not have around your table and are strategically important to include? Or is there more of a general need for diversity across the board? This will help ensure you avoid building a hierarchy of diversity that has the potential to leave people feeling like one characteristic is better than another and ultimately excludes people, which is clearly not inclusion and the opposite of what you've actually intended to set out to achieve. So start with having an understanding that diversity has many layers and includes characteristics that are visible, so gender, race, age, the invisible or less visible, such as class, religion, sexual orientation, and also cognitive diversity, which includes the different ways of thinking, viewpoints, and different skill sets. Whilst there are things like mission, vision, policies, practices, and co-worker behaviours that are all key influencers, the reality is that the success of creating an inclusive workplace that enables diversity will mostly come down to the leaders of the business. The question that needs to be asked then is, how do we get everyone in a room and get everyone to feel like they belong? Because if they don't, you will have a diverse workforce, but won't reap the benefits of them feeling safe to speak up and collaborate and know their contribution is sought, valued, and considered. Therefore, it is really important to ensure that yourself and other leaders in your business model behaviour and are really aware of their own biases and being conscious of not stereotyping. So in relation to biases, we all have them. So a function like recruiting often sees the affinity bias that favours people who are similar to us. This is comfortable and safe. So to counter and prevent this, leaders need to strategically consider the makeup of panels that will challenge the status quo and break a cycle of getting people who are like us to work in our business. Also, challenge the criteria that is asked in the application process and the conditions of employment that may exclude subsets of our population. Changing our mindsets and being more open will be what encourages people that you may not ordinarily see apply to work in your business and allow you to see the potential of talent out there that you may have previously had self-select out. So I guess using a really relevant and current example being COVID, which has been a massive interrupter to many businesses, it has also certainly opened leaders' eyes to the opportunity that remote working is possible. This is the same for part-time workers. Often the go-to for roles is full-time. However, by making these requirements less rigid and just opening the door to see who is sitting in other spaces, the job potentially becomes more and more possible for a wider pool of talent and creates a more inclusive recruitment process. Once you have some diversity around the table, it is then, as I previously mentioned, being aware that one person doesn't always tick one box. People have layers and many experiences that shape their thoughts. So it is being receptive to this and really listening to understand their perspective rather than assume based on a stereotype or biases that we may hold. It is also being aware of how we as leaders respond. So did we approach a conversation with an open mindset, or did we dismiss the thought because of one of our own biases? For each time an idea is dismissed, it reduces the likelihood that that individual will feel psychologically safe to do that again. What is really important, however, is that if in the process of asking yourself why you want or need a diverse workforce produces the answer that it's the right thing to do or it's an important visual for your business, it will increase the chance of creating chaos and your business not reaping the benefits of diversity. The groundwork and leadership commitment to creating an inclusive space is the process to focus on to ensure your business will receive the benefit that diversity brings. Thanks so much.
Hi, Troy and James. Thank you so much for inviting me here today to talk to you about diversity and explore the experiences that I've had, both within workplaces and on boards and committees in relation to how we adapt to and how we engage with diversity. Now, we often actually hear people talking about managing diversity, but the reality is that I prefer the term engaging with diversity, and not just organisational and leadership engagement with diversity, but also our own concept of the value that we might bring to an organisation in terms of our own diversity and what we feel that we can contribute, and how we engage with others to actually tell them what value add we have for an organisation or for a team. As you know, I deal in conflict resolution or conflict disruption, as I like to say. And a lot of times when I come to engage with people and to explore what's happening for them, I look at the diversity of their experiences. I look at the diversity of the story, the narrative that they bring to the situation. And quite often it is this actual diversity, people's cultural experience, backgrounds, their way of thinking, these sorts of diversity that actually create and nurture conflict in a sense when people are unable to or unwilling to engage with other people's diversity and to actually realize the benefit that that diversity brings. Generally, we look at diversity as being gender-based, but there is a whole range of diversity there. And how do we see ourselves within the context of our value to an organization? Do we see ourselves as part of a homogenous other, or do we see ourselves as somebody who's outstanding, special, brings value to the organization? How do we engage? How do we actually, in a sense, I guess, sell that diversity to the organization so that they realize that having us on their team is a fantastic opportunity? And how do we as leaders actually engage with other people's diversity? How do we actually nurture that? How do we accept it? How do we utilize it productively and with them so that we can breed innovation in our organizations, bring new thinking and a variety of thought processes to anything that we're doing within our organization? These are some of the challenges that organizations face all the time. And it's a great thing now that we're talking about diversity in a whole lot of different perspectives. And I would encourage people to look around at your workforce, get to know them, get to understand them, get to see what diversity they bring, engage with them, and make the best use of that possible, rather than just ticking off a requirement in a tick box that says you need this blend of people within your organization to qualify as a diverse workforce. Thank you very much.
Over the years, I've come to realising that employing people from diverse backgrounds is essentially the easier part. The harder stuff happens once they start work. This is where I think we need to kick it up a gear or two, to have the environment where they can grow and they can contribute. Everyone is different, and I think this is a really good thing, because it's this difference which helps organisations grow. The underlying organisational culture is where the true work lies, and I focus on people through the lens of culture add, not culture fit. Think about it. If I'm not being heard, if I don't feel valued, and my views really don't matter, why would I stay? Worse still, if I did stay, it becomes just a job. So a culture add environment for me encourages people to challenge, to share, to question. It's where diverse views are genuinely respected and people have a sense of value and belonging. So from the organisation's perspective, my culture add plan includes being proactive about diversity and inclusion, not reactive, and gaining commitment through the whole organisation. So if the organisation truly believes and values diversity, it's going to find the resources it needs to implement it. Yes, we conduct diversity audits and we address the gaps. And we also review policies and procedures, looking at what impact these might be having through the lens of people from diverse backgrounds. And from an employee perspective, I focus on the strengths of the individual, not the group. I want staff to feel comfortable with their differences and to feel that they can be themselves. I do undertake diversity training, and the training I look at focuses on celebrating difference more than meeting any of the legislative requirements. For me, diversity is about inclusion, and staff need to know that their diversity is not just accepted, but welcomed. And by developing a culture of adding value, the recruitment and the retention processes essentially take care of themselves.
Insights. Thank you very much for those. James, diversity, it's a trendy topic, if I could call it that, or certainly a topic that at senior leadership team conversations is increasingly important, but not one that's like falling off a log to achieve terrific outcomes with. Final thoughts from you, final comments around, I guess, those leaders thinking about, how do we bring the right kind of diversity? How do we nurture and support effective diversity practices within our organisation? What comes to mind?
It's absolutely worth pursuing, it's worth spending the time on, and it's worth having a conversation with someone who's got expertise in this area, just in the same way you would have a conversation with an HR expert about a change in your workforce conditions, right? There are things you have to get right, and as importantly, there are things you want to avoid getting wrong. So if you don't have the clear view of how to go about it, this is an area I think you'd go and talk to someone who's got experience, because you want to get it done the right way. And for the right reasons. You don't want it to be tokenistic, or damaging. That doesn't do anyone any good. But the benefits are very clear. A good, diverse workforce benefits the company, benefits the consumer, and it's the way that I think most companies should be going.
And I think, again, you know, where we should be embracing and nurturing and exploring all facets of diversity, I'd then say what we need to buttress that is a sense of commonality. If it is a common purpose, if it is a sense of belief in the values of the organisation, that no matter who you are, where you are in the business, where you've come from prior to this, you're here because this is what we're all trying to achieve together. And if it's a customer, if it's a community, if it's a group of beneficiaries, that everything else can be quite different about how we're thinking here, but that has to remain on track. That, I think, is going to be part of the secret sauce to getting that right. So, all right, tricky conversation, lots of questions raised, but there are great people. If you want to kind of reach out to the Strategy Road Swarm, we have a number of folk within our crew, but there are certainly a lot of others out there who might be able to help you in this area. You can get in contact with me, details down the bottom here. And of course, if you'd like to have us come and riff about any kind of business topic or challenges that you're dealing with in your world, we'd love to come and sit on your deck and bring the advisory deck on the road. James, thank you for your insights.
Thank you, Troy.
Thanks so much for joining us on the advisory deck.